Crisis Core is one of the most beloved games in the Final Fantasy series, but when it first released back in 2007, a lot of people didn't get to play it because it was only available on PSP. I was one of those people. I didn't get to play it. So when I saw Crisis Core Reunion releasing, I was pretty hyped. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Rosca rating, where I, Rosca, talk about my thoughts, opinions, and overall experience playing a game, and give it a personal rating. You might agree with me, you might disagree with me, but hey, to each their own, right? Let's get started. Alright, to start out, this game looks beautiful. I played it on PC and ran it in 120 FPS, and it just looks amazing. The combat, cutscenes, some animations, even something boring like Zack just walking through the desert just looks really good. And also, this game is surprisingly goofy, but I guess we've had our fair share of that in other Final Fantasies. The combat is pretty simple, but that's not a bad thing. If I were to describe it in 3 words, they'd have to be...
Activating combat mode.
Okay, yeah, if you play this game, you're gonna hear that a lot. Well, the combat's pretty good. You have the attack, dodge, block, and you can also customize your abilities with materia to give Zack different skills to use in battle. One cool thing about the combat in Crisis Core is the slot machine mechanic. And it's when you're fighting enemies, you have this little slot machine in the top corner of the screen just randomly cycling through different photos of characters you've met during the story. And whatever they land on can affect your battle in different ways. So you can get buffs like using skills with no MP or AP cost, or even some cool cutscene attacks. So with this like RNG thing, it kind of makes battles different, like no fight feels the same because the slot machine can land on different things every time. But oh, random encounters. I was never the biggest fan of random encounters, but in Crisis Core, they seem to spawn in the center of paths, so you can kind of avoid fights by staying on the outside of some paths. It doesn't work all the time, but I kind of started doing that because I'm not the biggest fan of random encounters. So, one thing I realized about when people talk about Crisis Core, they typically only bring up Zack and how memorable the game's ending was. And as a first-timer finishing Crisis Core Reunion, I kinda started to understand why. It's a pretty short game. It took me about 15 hours or so to finish. The overall story, I have to admit, isn't the most memorable, but it gets its point across. And I don't want to get into spoilers, but my favorite moments would probably have to be whenever Zack and Aerith were together. Then occasionally Genesis would show up and start reciting poems again, and that kind of got a bit old after the first 10 times or so, but to each their own, right? And unfortunately, there are times that you are reminded that this is a reskin of a 15-year-old PSP game, because during cutscenes sometimes you'll get these awkward, robotic dialogue exchanges and really weird character movements. There are times where I have laughed because how goofy something looked, even though the cutscene was supposed to be a serious moment. I will say I did not 100% the game, but I did a decent amount of the side stuff, which I thought were okay. The side quests typically just drop you onto a random map and you fight some stuff and you're done. So it could get a bit repetitive if you just do a bunch of quests over and over and over again. But again, the original game was made for the PSP, and doing lots of simple quests like that on a handheld console, you probably wouldn't think too much of it. And so, as for Crisis Core Reunion's Rosca rating, I'm gonna have to give it a nice 7.5 out of 10. Overall, I enjoyed the game, even though there were some times where it shows its age. If you like Final Fantasy games, I think it's definitely worth a play. Just remember that at its core, it's Crisis Core, it's still a 15-year-old game. But I am curious, how many of you guys played the original? Comment below, let me know. otherwise, see you in the next video.